Now I'm excited to introduce our two hosts. First, I would like to introduce Reverend Dr. Ferrari. Dr. Ferrari is a fellow in 6 psychological organizations, including APA, APS, and Division 27, Society for Community Research and Action. He is the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Prevention and Intervention in the Community since 1995. DePaul University awarded Deacon Joe its highest honor for research in 2001 and for public service in 2009. And the APA awarded him its Distinguished Italian-American Psychologist Award in 2016. He is the author of over 430 scholarly publications and 550 professional conferences. And now I would also like to introduce Devki Patel. Devki is a MS candidate completing a thesis on the decision-making processes behind decluttering in the context of the pandemic. She completed her undergraduate BA degree in psychology at DePaul. Dev is interested in consumer behavior, how our attitudes, beliefs, and preferences shape our consumption and disposal decisions. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to our two hosts.
Great. Thank you, Harolyn. This is, I think, my second time talking to you, the alumni, and I'm delighted to be invited back. So I must have passed the audition, as they would say. Tonight, we're going to talk about, the first time I talked about my work on procrastination, but this is the more recent research we've been doing here at DePaul in collaboration with other colleagues. And it's been on what the environment does to our behavior, particularly when the environment is cluttered. What happens to us? How does it impact on our life? Now, we will be peppering this throughout with some practical suggestions as I go through in terms of what can you do, and if there's time, we'll even look at the popular mantra, touch it and keep it if it brings you joy. We'll look at that mantra as well. But I don't want to waste any more time, and I want to go right in with the slides. Right, Dev? Should we do that? Let's do it.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, Joe, go for it.
Okay, so I couldn't be happier, really. And I want to say this publicly, that Dev is working with me. Dev is a fantastic master's student. She was an undergrad at DePaul. We have a very small master's program. She competed to get in, and she decided to stay. And I was delighted that I am able to work with her. So just top notch. And she's been involved in this last year. She was able to get part-time work with a former student of mine in consumer behavior. And so she's really gotten turned on to a lot of research and interest in consumer research stuff. So Dev, I mean, I can let you talk more about that, but if anybody's out there is looking for a committed person who understands research that can do some product evaluation, program evaluation, Dev is your person. I wanted to say that. Okay, now let me get this thing started. Nope, anytime. It's the truth. You know, I'll say that forever. There's people you always have to thank. You can't do research alone. So let me briefly go through. A lot of my research on this topic of clutter is with Dr. Catherine Roster from the University of New Mexico. She's in the School of Business. She's a consumer psychologist, and she was interested in what are possessions that people have, and I've been interested in what is home. And so we've been looking at how does possessions, cluttered possessions, impact on our sense of home. We work with, we advise, we are advocates of this decluttering coaches organization called the Institute for Challenging Disorganization. Now, these are professional decluttering coaches. And notice their title. Their title doesn't say clutter in it. It says challenging disorganization. Because the key, or a major key, is people are disorganized. They don't realize they have 18 spatulas and 15 blue pairs of pants in the closet and so many piles of books. All right. So these decluttering coaches of ICD will tell you is let's organize and let's see what you got before you run out to the container store and buy anything. That's one of the practical advices. They are international, so there may be one near or several near where you live, and you may want to look up ICD and find somebody. But I've also been pretty blessed, with a lot of research colleagues. I call them associates. They're not really assistants, students, both undergrad and graduate. And so I wanted to put a picture up here of our current team. And I also want to particularly thank my graduate students this year. Helena Swanson, awesome. She's a doctoral student in community psych, and she's been my student all along. She's been great. Alyssa and Andrew are two current students also. So along with these undergrads, and these are my blasts from the past. If some of these alumni are on tonight, I want to talk to you later, see how you're doing. Okay. But what is clutter? All right. Well, if you look at it as a verb, it means to run in disorder, to fill or cover scattered or disorganized material information. As a noun, clutter is considered a crowded or confused mess. And we talk about things that clutter a place. And so decluttering is to eliminate that clutter. It's cleaning out the mess. It's moving from disordered to organized, if you like, as you see in this picture this person has. Hoarding is not the same as clutter, and hoarding is considered a psychiatric psychological disorder. It's in the DSM, but clutter is not, interestingly enough. And clutter is a component, a symptom of hoarding, but they're really kind of different. So let's understand what hoarding is to give you the context of what clutter is all about. All right, when you talk about hoarding, compulsive hoarding, right, that's the acquisition of and the failure to discard large amounts of possessions. The possessions are useless. They have limited value, but you fail to get rid of them. These are the clinical definitions that the DSM, psychologists and psychiatrists, would use. It's in a living space that's sufficiently cluttered, and you can't do other activities in that space because it's so cluttered. And it causes hoarding as well as clutter, significant distress. It impairs your ability to function. So it's not an adaptive strategy. You can't function well, and it causes the hoarding. All right. Randy Frost is an old friend of mine. He has recently retired, but he was at Smith College in Massachusetts, and he was sort of the man, the person you go to study hoarding. Very influential to get this concept added in psychological and psychiatric literature. So clutter is not the same, but very similar, right? Hoarding, the way I view this, and the ICD members will say, think of hoarding, you buy lots of, or you have lots of the same thing. You hoard, an obsessive compulsive person, well, you know, toilet paper, toilet paper, toilet paper, toilet paper, toilet. So you hoard that. Clutter is more horizontal, and you have just more stuff, more breadth of material. I always think it's kind of funny when we talk about other people, it's there, also begins with an S, but it ends with a T. It's there, but when it's mine, it's my stuff. All right, so it's kind of interesting. Why do we say that? Why don't we use that word for that as well? But we don't. So how do we study in our research based on Roster's work and I study research clutter? We define it as an overabundance of possessions that collectively cause chaos and a disordered living space. All right, so it's an overabundance. It's not just having a lot, it's too much. There's a tipping point when it becomes too much. All right, when is that tipping point? That depends on when you can't take it anymore. Dev, you want to jump in with anything as I talk? You certainly can.
I'll jump in when I feel like it. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Okay. All right. Don't want you to feel excluded there. We've been measuring, Dr. Roster and I, for the last 5-7 years, clutter by looking at what we created called the Clutter Quality of Life Scale. Now, we developed this with those ICD members. So we asked the decluttering coaches, get us your worst, pardon the word, but you know, the people who have the most clutter, clients that you deal with. And we developed this as self-report measure based on that. And we're measuring the consequences of the clutter. What happens to your living space, wherever that might be, if you have too much clutter? And generally, these are the 4 things that people tell us that it seemed to impact most. It's an impact, the clutter has an impact on my livable space. Just too much, too many piles. They're just too disorganized, and they're just all over the place, piles. It really causes me distress, emotional discomfort. I don't feel comfortable. I look at it and I get anxiety. There's a negative emotion, if you would, that arises from this. It's really impacted my relationship with other people, family members, friends. They really don't like to come over my house or come to my office or whatever it might be, because I just got too much of that stuff. Maybe I fight a lot with the family members as well. And I'm spending a lot of money. I feel like I don't have enough money. We'll talk about the financial impact of all of this later tonight. But having too much of this material just seems to impact on my ability to buy things. I don't have any discretionary funds. The credit cards are always maxed out because I just got so much of this stuff I just keep buying. I say turn off the home shopping network shows. All right. But of course, they want to make it easy. Let me just digress for a minute. Those shows want to make it easy. Amazon wants you to point and click and buy. Oh, absolutely. All right. But the problem is people just buy. I don't have to worry about it now. It's going to come later. There are psychological consequences from clutter. Whoops, I don't know why I did that, but, and again, because we're psychologists, we look at this angle, all right? Low well-being, what we find is people who have lots of clutter report lower well-being, all right? Correlational, if you would, in that the more clutter, the less well-being they have. More clutter, the more negative moods they report. They're not that happy. And I didn't say depression because I don't really know that yet. And by the way, you're talking to two of the people who are the national, maybe international experts on this topic. There are not a lot of people studying clutter in psychology. So any of you listeners out there or watchers tonight who are thinking of grad school and maybe want to go into psych, come look us up. We're always interested in people joining. But anyway, back to this. Mood disorders. There's negative emotions about the self. People who have lots of clutter begin to devalue themselves. Yeah, I'm just bad at making the decision. I can't get rid of it. I don't know. I just have this, I'm no good that I buy these things. You can hear the language that they're saying, that making themselves victims of this. I thought this was interesting, that there's an overabundance of unhealthy food. People who have lots of clutter tend to not have good eating habits, good healthy food choices that they're making. I don't know, maybe you know, Dev, because you know the literature more recent than I, but they may have less activities. They may be more likely to be stationary. Is that true?
I think I can't speak to their activity, but I know that binge eating is also more common in folks that have an overabundance of personal possessions. So
Yeah.
not only are they not eating well, but sometimes they're eating too much at a time.
And that's pretty interesting. To me, that's an interesting connection. What's the dynamics? I'm not sure. And they just report a lower quality of life. They're just not happy about their life. They're just not satisfied with their life. And this is both, as you'll see in a minute, home and office clutter as well. Why? Why is it so hard for people to declutter? Well, let's look at some of these reasons. It could be that the item that they want to declutter is an emotional trigger. Now, it could be a positive emotion. If I get rid of that, oh, I'm going to forget about that great vacation we had, that wonderful time, or that special person. Or it could be, an emotional negative trigger. Oh, I don't want to touch that. I don't want to think about that because it reminds me of that person, that event, that thing. So, just going to avoid it can also be something that's going on. So it's a trigger to something of the past. This is something we don't often think about, but I think it's important. People don't declutter because they may not be the sole deciders of what to get rid of and not. If anyone is living with a partner, my wife's not here right now, you'll know what I'm talking about. I can't get rid of stuff because she'll say, oh no, that's mine. I got to have this. I'll never forget the salt shaker years ago when we were moving out here from 27 years ago from the Midwest. It was a crystal short salt shaker we never used, have no idea where she got it. I think she bought it at a flea market or something, and I went to get rid of it, and I heard about that for weeks, months, about the salt shaker. All right, so there may be multiple decision makers that are involved, and that can cause conflicts. So we don't declutter because we want to avoid the conflicts. People will often say, I don't have the time to declutter, which is why our research that Dev will be talking about later about decluttering during COVID is so interesting, because now people are home. Now they have the time. True, they're working from home and readjusting to that. And if you're a mom or a parent, you have all the kids. Got it. But people did have or do have more time. It is true, and I mean, jump in this, you ever hear the old expression, we're all in the same boat? And there's actually someone published something about this and said, we're not, during this COVID, we were and we are not in the same boat. We're in the same storm. We're all in this together, but some people's boats are better equipped or shaped than others. Financially, they can handle it. Some people couldn't. So it isn't that we're all in the same boat. No. We're in the same storm. So people said they don't have lack of time, but some people did. And so why did they declutter or not declutter? Lack of resources. I just don't know how to do that, or I don't have the ability. Well, there are professionals who will help you declutter. All right. And now we're ready to talk about the research that we've done. So you can give us an applause. Yeah. All right. Dev, any words before I jump in?
Nope, you're doing great. Keep going.
I love it. Okay. Who clutters? Where is this clutter? All right. First study we did, Roster and I, we had over almost 1,400 cluttered adults. Actually, we had 16, but once we cleaned the data and we found about 1,400 adults who reported, I have a clutter issue. They were across the US. This was done by an online study. Okay. Now, if you look at my data in parentheses, 94% of them were women. Don't remember the percentage, but the vast majority were Caucasian women. Okay. But only 80 men. Let me talk about that for a minute, because that fascinated me. When we did this study and we only had 80 men, I quickly went to the ICD people, experts, and said, is this a gender thing? Are women the ones with clutter problems and men don't? And they said, no, men have there's no gender difference. Men have the same clutter problem, but men are less likely to admit it. Men are going to call it my toys. That's my stuff. That's my hobby. That's what I like. Men are less likely to have a professional help. So don't believe that there's a gender difference. Men, you've got stuff too. You got clutter also. All right. Just that men are less likely to want to do anything about it. That's interesting. So what did we give? We gave these variety of scales. I'm not going to read them to you, but self-extension, but I'll define some of these. Self-extension meant, does the item I have reflect who I am? Is it an extension of who I am? It's an interesting concept that people look at in consumer psychology, that the item sort of reflects who I am. Because, think of it this way. If I lost this item that I have, how do you feel when you lose something? Oh, you're upset. You don't like it. Darn, where did I lose it? But if someone stole it from you, if they steal it from you, how do you feel? Oh, I feel violated. I feel like my privacy. Isn't that the same thing? Depends. Now, the interesting question to me, and there hasn't been a lot of research, is what if there's a natural disaster? What if a flood takes it away? What if a hurricane takes it away? Right? In all three cases, it's gone. It's not in my possession anymore. Okay. What happens to me? If you listen to people, when the news reporters interview people after a hurricane or tornado, they will often say, yes, we're upset. We lost our stuff, but we're alive and we've got the family and right? So there's this interesting dynamic that when our items that we that we identify with are lost in different ways. That's an interesting line of research. Does life make you happy? Life satisfaction. A home. What is the meaning of home? All right, if I'm going to digress there for a minute, Dev, if that's okay. This is the concept. Okay, it's not the same as having a sense of community, and it's not the same as having a physical attachment. Those are concepts that we community psychologists explore. Home is something different. Home is not house. Listen to what we say. I traveled and I can't wait to go home. You eat me out of house and home. Whenever we're together, that's my home. We're going to put the person in a nursing home. All right. There's something different about home versus house. And that is why we scholars, we community psychologists particularly, get pretty upset when we use the word, people use the word homeless, as if you're somehow less a person because you don't have a home. Well, first of all, people that are houseless are houseless. Those people are not homeless. There's a home. There's a group of people that they identify with that satisfies them, that's safe for them to be with. There's a sense of home among those people. All right. So, but they are houseless. And it's interesting that in our culture, we still allow that derogatory concept to be used. You're houseless. Well, that's what homeless means. Excuse me. You're homeless. No, they don't have a dwelling. That's a different thing. So I've been always interested in psychological home, that sense of how do I feel that I'm at home. Indecision and behavioral procrastination. That's abbreviations for that. That's what I'm well known for. We won't go into that tonight. And then a sense of attachment. All right, what did we find, Roster and I, in 2016? That people who have clutter report low life satisfaction. So that mantra that we hear from the media, that Gloria Gaynor would sing about, if you know who she is, more, more, more. I got to have more, more, more. That was a song from a song of my generation. All right. That notion of buy, 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 have will actually make you less satisfied. Our culture, our Western culture, our American culture says own, buy, possess, have more. Actually, we're less satisfied with that. And we also tend to be more indecisive and behaviorally procrastinate. I can't decide whether I want to keep it or not. That's just some of the findings. I invite you to go to our 2016 article. We shifted, and Dev was part of this, looking at office clutter in two populations, two samples. Dev, do you want to do any of this talking? Would you please? Could you do the first one? I'll do the remote.
Yeah, trying to expand my screen here. So the first study was of corporate workers. So these were folks that were still working in their office on site. And we found in this study where we were looking at upper level versus lower level. So upper level being defined as like management, C-suite positions, and lower level being associates, positions like that. Right, clerical work, exactly. And we found that upper level employees are more likely to notice clutter and report clutter than lower level employees. There was no difference in the type of clutter. The number one type of clutter that we found was paper, followed by equipment. I know that means like hardware, PC monitors. And then the last was trash, things like empty coffee cups, paper that's trash. We found that clutter was negatively related to work satisfaction, and it was positively related to risk for burnout and tension in the workplace. So we can see that even the small bits of things that we're leaving around in our office spaces are contributing to negative impacts that we have both in our work and just mental health wise.
Great, that's right. Just going to pepper this a little bit, add a little bit. So look at those top three. So what we wanted to look at here was, well, all the research we've been doing, Roster and I have been looking at the personality, the individuals. What about the stuff? What is it that people have? What is the stuff that people have, particularly when you talk about office workers? So we asked people to list the top 5, and then we focused on the top 3, and that was consistent. So here we are in this computer age. I'm old enough to remember when we were told, you won't have paper anymore. You'll be able to put it all in the computer. Yeah, but then we printed it up anyway. So we had a hard copy of it so we could walk around with it later on. So the computers didn't make us do less clutter, gave us a new way to generate more, I think. Yep, and so all of that. So again, the more clutter you have, the less you're going to be satisfied with your job, less pleasure you get from it. But that's corporate workers. I'm going to jump in on this one then, Dev. We looked at remote workers at home, but this was just before COVID, this data collection. We didn't have it then. Again, interesting, mostly men, mostly middle-aged, and mostly Caucasian men. So while the home study had mostly women, the office studies had more men. I don't know what that means. But anyway, we looked at work-related behavior, and the bottom line was it again, even for working at home, all right, it's going to negatively impact on office clutter. More likely to be indecisive and procrastinate and have lower job performance. Emotional exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion is the new word, not that new, but perhaps for you as a listener, new word for burnout. They don't use that word in psych research. They call it emotional exhaustion, if you want the proper term. And lower work control. People are reporting, I don't have control over my job as much. Indecision predicted this and predicted all these factors. And again, at home, paper was the number one, cluttered items, lots of paper, files, printed materials, memos that are there. Trash. Now trash becomes the second one. All right. So at home, more dirty dishes, coffee cups or whatever, right? Used cups. And then office supplies. It comes up in here. So many paper clips. Do we need so many paper clips that people have? All this kind of stuff. Interesting. No. And now we have new data sets. That's why if there's any listeners out there who want to find this interesting and they want to connect with us to do more analysis, we have a data set that was connected on digital clutter, right? We're saving. How many files do people have? We have not really analyzed this. And notice my samples, our samples are adults. We're not looking at college students here. I like to use although college students are adults, but you know what I mean, older adults, people necessarily out of college, mostly men again, all through online that we collect these data. E-waste, oh, the e-waste. This is the question I'll ask you in a few minutes. How many cell phones, old cell phones, smartphones, do you have in your house? There's a study that actually showed how many people have on average. There's so much e-waste that people, electronic waste that people have. And Dev and I and my team have found a great nonprofit in Chicago that will take your old e-waste, strip it clean, and modernize it, and then give it to people in Chicago area who need computers. Kids on the South Side, kids in certain communities that need computers. You know, the digital divide to me became very apparent during COVID when I would see the news and they would say people are going on Zoom for classes for students and then kids don't have computers. And I'm like, today in 2021, people still don't have internet computers? You know, to me, that's fascinating. You would think in a country like America. Anyway, all right, I see we have some chat questions. Should we stop here before we go to the next? Or maybe I should just do what does it all mean? Because that's kind of a good spot.
Someone asked what the organization was that does the work that you were just discussing. And so I let them know. It's
you put it
CompuDopt. Yep, it was me.
Okay, I said, oh, it is somebody who knows. Okay, so it's an organization called CompuDopt that we have partnered with. We actually interviewed them. We could send you afterwards. Would you please share who can use these resources and how can we connect with them? Okay, contact us and we will. Yeah, it's a great, their headquarters is in Downers Grove. And they're actually, Dev, and you can correct me because you interviewed them. You were part of that team. Aren't they in like 7 cities in the United States? They're more than just Chicago. The headquarters is in Chicago, but they're national.
Yeah, I think it's more than 7 cities. I think it's maybe 7 states and then several cities within the states, but they're in Texas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, all over the country.
Yeah. So again, they take people's old technology, they'll strip it. You should strip it first, sure. But rather than throw it into a landfill, this organization, this nonprofit, has experts who clean it and actually even offer classes, training for people. Am I right, Dev? Right? That they offer training if you have kids who don't know how to use this or people don't, they offer this training. Wonderful nonprofit. So is it CompuOrg? Nope. CompuDopt. CompuOrg? No. CompuDopt.org, perhaps that's what they're called. Yes. Is that correct, Dev?
Yes, I sent the link in the chat. So it's CompuDopt.org.
Okay, great. Good. Good. I like the interaction here. Thank you, folks. Thanks for the great questions. So what does it mean? Well, owning all these items doesn't give you pleasure. And in fact, someone has done a study that showed US citizens have over $7,000 worth of unused stuff in their home. Right? So don't start giving me a list, but I'm sure you can start thinking about that. The 3 locations I've learned from the ICD coaches that people have the most clutter is in the kitchen, in the closet, and books. So maybe this resonates with you. Do you need all that stuff? Has consumerism gone wild, crazy, you know? Oh, there's an interesting new social media study that came out. I don't know if you know about this one, Dev, that showed people are doing more stuff. People are posting more because there's this hunger for likes. They want views. So they're trying to buy more, get more, so that they can show on Facebook. I don't know if anybody uses Facebook anymore, but Twitter, whatever, Instagram. Look at all my stuff. Here's my TikTok thing that they have that they want to show. So interesting that social media has played a role here. All right, I see a bunch of questions. Let me finish question, people. It's like teaching. Until I get to finish my train of thought, please. In the office, a cluttered office desk leads to less productivity, whether you're the manager or regular worker, right? And is all that stuff really making you better? Now, usually at this point, people will raise their hand and say, but what about Einstein? He had a cluttered desk. And I say to people, you ain't no Einstein. Maybe you're going to give me the single N of 1 case study where it makes a difference. For most people, clutter is going to impact. All right. Most of us are not Einstein that we're going to be able to solve this 1, 2, 3. And the digital waste. Read what this says, my friends. US citizens have over $30 billion, that's a B, of unused or used electronics. All those wires, you still got those old cables, right, that you have, all of that. These virtual resources are lost because you know that in old computers, old printers, old laptops, old things, there's minerals that are needed, precious metals that are in there. So when you throw that away in a landfill, you're literally throwing away precious metals that people have. So let's go to the questions. Can we, Dev? Are you ready? Before I go any further? This is great. Okay.
I think there's only one question. The other ones
5.
were mostly about the link.
Oh.
But there's a question about how do you define a cluttered desk?
Piles that are disorganized, that are interfering. This is how I would define it. All right. Remember, it's disorganization. It's items that are causing you distress. There was a study when I was doing research on procrastination that found that because people procrastinate and are not organized, they will spend up to 3 hours a week finding things on their desk that are arm's length away. Where's that paper? I know I have those keys somewhere. Where are they? All right, you think about that. That's a lot of lost time only because people were not organized. All right, so we're talking about a disorganized desk that's interfering with your ability to function. Things you are not currently using, and you're not currently using them, right? That these things have been there for a long time. Now, we haven't studied, and I'd love to study, minimalist. You know, I'm a certain generation, but there is rumor, they're saying that younger generation, current generation, want minimal, less stuff. Is that true? I don't know of any data, and we have no data on what is cluttered to them and how much stuff tips into clutter where it might not be considered somebody else. I mean, that'd be a fascinating line of research. But again, you're looking at 2 of the handful of scholars on this topic. Can't do it all. All right, one more question. I'm going to go back. Are you using the 11 item or the 18, says Joy? What would be a good resource for interpreting the scale sources? I would use the 18. That's a great question. We had the original 18 that I showed you a few minutes ago, and we've got more to cover here, but because I like a longer scale if it has, this is the social psychologist in me, if it has subscales, because with subscales, all right, you take the 18 and you make them smaller, you can really pick apart what's going on more than a total score. But Roster and I, particularly Roster, came up with a shorter 11 items where we got rid of some questions and there's just clutter. All right, so I would recommend, I don't know what your purpose is, Joy, or what you're wanting to find out, but I would definitely suggest the 18, but you can talk to me later about, and I can help you direct more, but that's what I would think. I noticed the Lynn didn't include the financial elements, so she took those out. Yeah, I don't remember the short version, but I like that. And if that's not important to you, that the finances, then delete it. All right, we'll take one more. Tegan says, will there be a recording of this? Yes, there is. I missed the first half. Sorry. Okay. I just talk a lot. And so you got to have it recorded. Don't laugh, Dev. Okay. All right. Let's go on, please. All right. Now, these I think is I'm going to turn it over to Dev to talk, right? These are, okay. These are your slides. So let me mute myself.
Yeah, so as Deacon Joe mentioned, over the last 2 years, we may or may not have had, a little bit more time to engage in decluttering tasks. I'm sure all of you considered some type of decluttering, whether it was a small drawer or your entire garage. And the reasons why we feel motivated to declutter vary. We may watch a Netflix special about minimalism or see a post on social media and feel motivated to organize. Internally, we might feel stress or anxiety about clutter. Or externally, we might notice that a space would be a lot more useful if we rearranged or decluttered it. Finally, we might experience some pressure from our partners or other folks that we live with in our homes to tidy up. So Dr. Roster and Dr. Ferrari, the research explores these motivators as well as some psychological variables to uncover the factors that either facilitate or prevent decluttering from actually happening. So of the 200 or so participants we had, 172 had complete responses to our survey and were included in this research. So the question is, why are some folks unable to achieve their decluttering goals despite feeling motivated to engage in them? Joe, you can skip over one.
I just jump in real quickly in terms of that. So yes, if I may. So we had these 220 people, if I remember. It comes down to, so these 172 not only reported, yes, during COVID, I've been decluttering, but they talked about what the project was. What was it that I worked on? And then we had 17 dimensions, maybe too technical unless you're a psych person. There's a guy named Brian Little who has this measure from a long time ago where you can take a qualitative item, like whatever people report, and make it quantitative. So in 17 different dimensions, 17, is it joyful? Was it easy? Did I like it? Was there all these different questions you can come across? And so that's 172 answered that, which is not a big number, but it's better than no number. Sorry, go ahead. Let me go on.
Yeah.
For you. Why is it not? There we go. Okay, go ahead.
Sure. So these are the 4 variables that I'm most interested in. Fear of COVID-19 is a fairly new measurement of anxiety and fear as a result of the coronavirus. Psychological reactance is a fascinating motivational phenomenon where restrictions on one's individual freedom creates a negative arousal state. So individuals will behave against the recommendations and advice of others, even if they were going to comply anyway. A really good example of this takes place on university campuses. So we do everything we can to curb binge drinking. We hurl health information to undergrads about the consequences of binge drinking. And maybe we've even experienced consequences of our own. But why don't these things work? Psychological reactance theory suggests that individuals who value their individual freedom to choose will take risks despite knowing that there are consequences. We can see the same thing with litter messaging, like anti-litter messaging, anti-smoking messaging. It just doesn't work. Deacon Joe likes to call it the New York, oh yeah effect. I was going to do
in
what
New
you
York, we
asked.
call it, oh yeah, I was going to do that, but now I'm not going to. Oh yeah, I won't do that now.
Now that you told me I have to do it, I won't do it. So in my research, I predict that those who experience high reactance to advice and recommendations, or those that are generally just non-compliant, will be less likely to follow through with the decluttering task, especially if the motivator was external, like spouse pressure. The third variable Deacon Joe mentioned earlier is indecision or decisional procrastination, which is one's tendency to delay a decision. And the final variable is clutter quality of life. The scale measures various aspects of well-being as a result of clutter and includes environmental, social, financial, and the emotional quality of life.
And we used, to answer Joy's earlier question, we used the 18 version, the longest, so we're going to look at that. You know, we're pressed for time, so we're not going to talk about the subscales on all of these kinds of things. But yes, Reactance is very cool. If you think about our culture today, you know, I'm just going to use as an example. You know, I would have worn my mask, but now you tell me I have to wear a mask, I'm not going to wear it. So people are reacting against it. It's an old concept, but we thought, what does that play a role in terms of during COVID time? Okay, I'm going to go on to the next one. We have a question in chat, but we're going to get to you. I see it. I just want Dev to be able to finish her talk. Go ahead.
We'll move on to the next slide.
Thank
you. So this is a very simplified version of what I predict are going to be the relationships between the variables I mentioned. So first, I predict that higher reactance to advice and recommendations will predict a greater impact of clutter on quality of life. I think that indecision will strengthen the relationship between reactance and quality of life. So if someone is highly reactant and they are predisposed to procrastinating decisions, they're going to have a more difficult time actually engaging in the decluttering task. Third, I predict that a high fear of COVID-19 will also predict a greater impact of clutter on quality of life. So those who are very afraid of contracting or dying from COVID might be less likely to engage in decluttering tasks, and they may experience lower emotional quality of life as a result of clutter. That's one of those subscales in the clutter quality of life measure. And then finally, I predict that indecision will also strengthen that relationship between fear of COVID-19 and clutter quality of life. I think that not being able to decide where it will make the effects of being afraid of COVID-19 and being high in psychological reactance, I think that indecision will make those worse. Keep in mind, these are just predictions based on the literature that I've reviewed and the related theories and studies from the last 20 years. So this is not conclusive as compared to the research that Deacon Joe presented earlier, but you'll have to read my thesis to see if these hypotheses are rejected or supported by our data.
That's right. Just a great job. Thank you. Before I go to the next one, just a little background where Roster and I came up with these questions, this issue in the beginning. So we did a focus group with leading ICD coaches. And one of this was, I would say, early in COVID, but not too early. We asked what's going on. And they said, you know, this myth that we're hearing, this statement that we're hearing is that now that people are decluttering more because they're home during COVID, they're saying is a myth. We're not getting more clients. People aren't telling, our regular clients aren't doing it more. All right. And that's interesting, they said, because one argument we've always heard, is that people will say, I'd love to declutter, but I'm so busy. If I didn't have this at work or that to work, all plausible excuses. Humans are great excuse makers, right? So they came over, now they have the time. And the coaches are saying they're still not, decluttering. And so that's why Roster and I said, let's look, could it be reactance? Could it be the fear and all these other variables? But all right, I see 5 questions in there. Let me see what's next. Oh, okay. I just want to finish this study. We've also found, because it might generate a few more questions, we've also found that there are 3 kinds of declutterers. From those 172 people, all right, instead of looking at just the personality, we looked based on that little project. What are the projects? And can we organize people around clusters of these projects? And yes, we came across 3 different types, and there's the disengaged. So we had 43 people, and we haven't even begun to analyze this. I have another graduate student I've asked if she would start looking at this. The project for this group of declutterers during COVID are saying it's not enjoyable and I don't have much control over the project. So they're kind of disengaged. It doesn't mean much to them. The next two groups are particularly interesting. The enthusiastic declutterer, right? The projects are enjoyable. I'm absorbed by it. Can't believe that I have time to do this. Lots of time. I can control the project. Remember, I mentioned to you earlier, we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. Well, here's somebody in a different boat. And I remember clearly, I don't know if she's on tonight, but my sister during this was saying, I'm so happy. I'm finally getting to that junk drawer and I'm organizing. Oh, this is good. And tomorrow I'm starting on that closet that I've got. She would have been one of these enthusiastic declutterers. And because for her, this was a great time to do all that. Then the third group is the challenged group. This is an interesting group. All right, notice these last two are high, a high number of people. They said the project's meaningful. I know I got to do this, but I just don't like it. And it causes me a lot of stress. Yeah, I got the time and I can control doing this, but it's just not enjoyable. So again, I find that fascinating, and I'd like to look at these three different groups. And what now that we know that there are types of declutterers like this, what's their personality? What did they declutter? When did they do declutter? Do they differ personality? And if not, then as a community psychologist, what's in the setting? What's the environment that's prompting that or not? Dev, do you have any questions, or should I go, or should we go into questions at this point too? Any comments or anything?
No comments. We can do some questions and then move on.
All right. So let me see if we can do this. I agree with Jessica. I'm sorry, I may have missed some of these. Oh, there's a lot of questions here. My mom. Oh, they said 6. It looks like more than 6. Are you recording it? Okay. Next one. My mom was a huge hoarder. Now, as a consequence, I'm a hoarder of what I would dream is. I would deem useful things. She died now, and I have a lot of stuff. Plus, I have my own already negative level of stuff. What do I do with all this? Okay, common error, a common comment. Let me, I guess we'll answer this now since we have the question here too. All right, because besides doing this with you, I have gone around with a decluttering coach. All right, I did a speaking series. Just nice to know. You know, I'm a clergyman, I'm a Catholic deacon. And so we would go to Catholic parishes and I would talk about what does scripture, what is the Bible, what are we called as Christians? Christian, clutter ain't Christian was the title of the thing. You know, stuff ain't saintly. We would ask, what drives us about clutter? And I would talk about that. And then the declutterer coach would come in and she would say, now, here's some practical stuff. Very well attended. I'd love to do that series again. One of the questions we got from people was, my mom died, my relative, and I've got all their stuff on top of my stuff. What do I do with it? And my kids don't want this stuff. This may sound familiar with you. What do I do with all this stuff that I would do that? Well, yeah, your kids may not want it. I have 3 adult children. They don't want all our stuff, but somebody does. Who? Look at some fire, some natural disaster that happened in your community. Those people have nothing now. Maybe the whole apartment was burned down. Maybe the whole house was burned down. And your kids don't want your fine china. They would love to have that to eat with. So maybe you could gift it to somebody else. You can give it to Goodwill, but we know that people are shopping Goodwill these days so they can, I don't know if you know this, buy stuff and put it on eBay to sell. I don't want to do that. I don't want to feed into that. I'd rather know somebody is using it, all right, that can use it. So give it to people that you know that can use it. You don't have to give away a lot of it, but there's often people who will have nothing and they would love to have those. You don't need 15 pairs of blue pants. Maybe you could live at 5 and maybe the other 10 you could give away. All right. So I can talk more about this and I would just want to get some of the questions. Jessica, how are you? Decluttering for retirees and those who are seniors, motivated by the need to not leave clutter in the house for those behind. One of the greatest gift you can give your children is to declutter while you're alive. Yep. So many people, estate sales, right? So many people wait till after they're dead and now we get rid of it. No. Now I'm going to talk about my own life, Dev. My parents did that. My parents started giving stuff away to us three. They had 4 kids while we were alive. We didn't want all that stuff, but it was important to mom and dad because my parents would say, I want to see the smile on your face now. When I'm dead, it ain't going to mean anything that you enjoyed this or that you like this. So the Christmas dishes we were given, the plant we were given, I'm thinking of some of the vase that we've got that may not necessarily be my taste, but I can use it. So this is a major motivator, and it should be, right? Give it away now so you can see the joy. And if the kids don't want it, you give it to some family that needs it. All right, she's not here, so I'll tell you. My wife likes to, for Christmas, give something new with something gently used from the house. So one way she shops our house, she calls it. She'll give away, so I don't know if I told you this, Dev, she'll buy something for our kids, but she'll give them something. When they come to visit, we say to them, you got to leave with one thing from your bedroom, okay? You got to take something with you, all right? So there's lots of strategies you can do. I would imagine it motivates people. Yes, thank you, Jessica. Good seeing you again. What does past trauma impact clutter? Yes, remember earlier we said that people may have had some trauma event, and by holding on to this event or going to try to declutter that event, that thing, it brings back the event. Or maybe there was something that they, sure, we are not clinical psychologists or therapists, so there may be some error and that might need some help. Amy is a professional organizer, right? And I work with seniors and retirees. Good, thank you, Amy. There's another group, NAPO. I don't know if Amy, you're a part of NAPO. That's the National Association of Professional Organizers. There's a group in Chicago that before COVID was going to have me come and talk, but then COVID came and they're supposed to get back to me. But that's another group. Now, these professional organizers, if I may, Amy, are not the same as the ICD members. ICD are really focused on clutter. Organizers are, as the name implies, focused on a much more organization skill. They're similar, but they are a little different. So I want viewers tonight to realize that there's a slight difference, but they do great work too. Yep, absolutely. I agree with Jessica. I want to determine where things go and not leave them. Yes, and that is, my friends, a major gift you can give your kids is to declutter ahead of time. So you're preventing the fighting among the kids. Who's getting what? If you can start giving it away while you're alive, you're seeing the joy. I'd be a little selfish here. I'm going to see how much my kids really enjoy this thing. You know, this was important. The grandkids may love it. Grandpa gave me this thing. Grandma gave me this thing. You know, that's wonderful. Then let the people do it behind them. The emotional overwhelming is real and it is huge. You are absolutely true, Amy. Absolutely. People feel overwhelmed. That's why you see you have these challenged people. It's not enjoyable. This is too stressful. Right. But there are some people, a large number, obviously, who find it fun, enjoyable. Great, I get to organize. And so you build on that. How can we identify item needs or tag as clutter? How do you identify something? The people like Amy and others will be able to help you answer that question, because you have to look at, have I used it in a while? Another common thing I would hear in these talks is, no, I'm holding on to it because it might come back in style. Ever hear that one, Dev?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, it will come back in style, but number one, it's going to be different, right? The zoot suit, the Nehru suit, if anybody remembers Nehru suits, all right, if they come back, the leisure suit may come back in style, all right, but it's not going to look the same. Ties come back, but they're a little different, you know? So holding on to it because it may come back someday in style, it doesn't make sense, because it's not going to be the same style and people will know that's from 1981. That's what they're wearing now. All right, so they'll know that. Or, well, I may fit into it someday. Ever hear that one? You know, I just know if I can lose the weight, this will come back and I'll be able to get into it. Let's be real. Are you really going to? Probably not. So, all right, let's move on.
Joe,
yep.
It was a few other questions.
Oh, shoot, I'm getting out of time.
I'm going to read you a few of those really quick.
Okay. Yep. And I feel like we didn't get far enough to cover everything else. Okay. A lot of great questions. Thank you, everybody. Whoops. Okay. Go ahead. I'm just going to put this up here. And maybe if I have 2 minutes, I'll talk about this. We have to end it at 6:30. We can't go 10 minutes more.
You know, if
people want to stay.
Yeah. If people have to hop off, we totally understand. If you're able to stay on, please do, and we'll finish the rest of these questions.
Great. Thank you. Go ahead. Let me hear your questions. Maybe I can answer them.
Really quick, someone wanted to know, have you looked into the impact of the psychology of collecting antiques in comparison to the psychology of clutter or hoarding?
Nope. Quick answer. Nope. I don't think we have. That's a great question, right, Dev? Yeah. There's so many good questions here. Yeah. To somebody who is a collector, is that clutter? Collecting versus clutter? Nope.
I think a big distinction there is the organization, right? So when you're collecting to collect collectibles or antiques or something, you're doing it because you have that purpose, and you're usually keeping it organized and storing it properly. Whereas clutter is really just stuff you're not using that's sitting around in the open.
And that's disorganized. Yes. And let's just jump in, follow up that answer. That question with this answer, that the decluttering coaches, and I don't know if the professional organizers would agree, but they would say you never organize it alone. You don't, because this notion of touch it and see if it gives you joy is wrong. If you touch it, you're going to keep it. You need to have somebody else hold the item up and say, do you really need this? Because once you get that tactile sensation of touching it, you're going to keep it. So not only do the decluttering coaches say, don't touch it, but even roster and consumer psychologists say, retailers know if you pick up the item in the store, you're going to buy it. You know, I don't know if viewers know this, but manufacturers pay money to have their products eye level to you in the store. Think of the supermarket. All right. They pay to be eye level, not top or bottom. Why? Because data shows if it's eye level, you're going to pick it up, you're going to buy it. So they actually pay to do that. So this notion of, anyway, your possessions is important, but I also wanted to throw in before people leave is that touching it will not let you get rid of it. The data and the practitioners tell us that. Go ahead, another question, please.
Okay, really quick, I'll just do this question. Someone wanted to know, when one person is a clutterer in a marriage, how do you manage the environment?
I'm glad my wife ain't here. Yeah, what do you do when one is and one isn't? You drink a lot. No, it's not easy. You fight, you have to pick the battles. You have to, remind them that the piles are there. Now, some of this, I'm giving you a case study here. All right. So my wife was an elementary teacher for 40 years before she retired. She came home with over 65 boxes of stuff that she had in the classroom. She was a damn good teacher. I mean, she was nationally board certified twice, if anybody knows this. So she was really good. She painstakingly worked on things that her kids in her classrooms could benefit from. If Johnny needed something special, she designed it. She did that. Anyway, but now she comes home and my garage is full, and I like to keep my cars in the garage. My other parts of the house are full. What do? Well, she starts going through it, and I had to gently remind her, Sharon, we can't get the other car in the house. Sharon, we have to go through this pile, stuff like that. We've got about 20 left. All right, she hasn't gone through them all, but 20 is better than having 65, So what do? You gently remind them. Sorry, that was a long-winded answer. Carolyn, you got another question for us, or should we go on with the other questions?
We can go ahead. No.
Okay. All right. I think I'm just, because there's so many other questions here, for the sake of fairness to everybody, I want to go through our summary. I kind of skipped a couple of things here. Is that okay, Dev? I skip a slide or two?
Yeah, that's okay. I think we covered a lot of the implications of why we do this research.
Yep. And so the question we're asking is, do you need it or do you want it? There's a big difference. Needs. What happens is in our culture, they make wants needs. I gotta have the latest phone. No, you don't have to have. You want to have. Make your life easier. But it's not like air. It's not like water. You gotta have air. You gotta have water. You gotta have food. You don't need an iPhone 13. Okay, you want. So the question you need to ask is, how many of those X's and Y's, whatever they are, will make you happy? All right. Will it make you happy? Will it bring you joy? And joy and happiness are not the same. All right. Joy, happiness, as psychologists, we say, is temporary. This is how I feel now. Joy is much deeper, excuse me. Christmas time, we sing joy to the world. We don't say happiness to the world. Joy is a much deeper emotion than that. So there's a difference there. Can we give it away? Can you share it with others? Can you dispose of it environmentally, safely? That's some of the decluttering stuff we're talking about. I'm all about creating memories, not the materials. Establish relationships. Don't establish relics, stuff. All right, and then I don't know if we have time to do this, but this is something you could take away, folks. I really wanted to hear from everybody. I knew an hour would be brief, but I was going to ask to introduce yourself for a minute, telling us who, and I don't know, Harlan, if we can do this or not, but what year did you graduate? What was your major? And then answer for us these 3 questions. This is an exercise that people use. I like to use. Give me the thorn, the rose, the thorn, and the bud. What has been one thing you decluttered? What is one thing you still got to do? That's your thorn. And what's the bud? What's been new that has emerged for you during COVID, during decluttering? And we sometimes forget about the bud, but a rose bush has buds as well as the rose and the thorns. So what's been new that's going to grow into something new for you? I don't know if we have time to do that. So but if we do, otherwise I'm just going to put up, our contact information while we go into some more questions. Does that make sense? Dev, let's answer some more questions. Okay. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Well, thank you. Keep those cards and letters coming. my clutter, my website is this good. Love to partner with you too. Natural option is very, I don't know what that question meant. Thank you for the presentation. Sounds good. My sister told me that call 1-800-JUNK. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, but I think the declutter people are a little more personal. My grandmother did a Swedish death cleaning. Before she moved out of her house she lived in. Swedish death cleaning. Not sure of that concept, but I think it's what we're talking about, is giving things away for people to have. Yeah, see the joy in their face now. That's the thing we forget. Don't leave it for them later. You're not tempting fate. I heard people say, well, if I declutter, give stuff away, I'll die young. No, life isn't like that. My God doesn't do that. I don't think yours does either. Excellent. Amazing. Thank you, study. We should have this more often. Okay, anytime. And then I think we got 2 other questions over here. Can we easily identify clutter? Can you see the questions, Dev? I'm doing all the talking.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
Do you want to try to answer that one?
I mean, I think Amy touched on it earlier. I think anything that is not being used for long periods of time would be defined as clutter. Anything that's sitting around simply because you feel some type of attachment to it and not because it's providing some type of utility in your home. I think that can be classified as clutter. And some stuff you can keep, that you have an emotional attachment to. It's just when you have a lot of it that it becomes a problem.
Yeah, and the ICD people would tell you, keep it. If it's so special to you, if that snow globe really was so important, keep it. The question is, do you need 19 more snow globes? Could you go from 19 to 9? That's the question. They would never tell you just get rid of them. They would say, that's why they say organize, because now you realize I've got 19 of them. I thought I had 5, 10, but wow, I got a lot more. So the organization is really key to decluttering, because it really helps you see, what do I have? And again, get a friend, if you don't want to hire somebody, to hold it up and say, do you really need this? Have you used it? Will you use it? Why? Don't you have your kid, this person who once said they liked it because I know you're an old friend, something like that, where somebody else, or buy the thing. This was another good example that the ICD people had said when I gave a talk once. Buy it and rotate it around to other homes. Maybe you need that special bowl Thanksgiving once a year, but you don't use it any other time. Do you really need to have that? Could you have some relative hold that? Storage companies love the clutter. They're going to tell you keep your clutter because that's how they make their money, by having you store stuff. I have clutter that is valuable. How can I sell it? Right, since you need the money. Okay, great. Well, you've got to find some collector, I don't know the places because I've never done that, but I'm thinking pawn shops. There must be some places that will give you the value of what that is. I used to collect, okay, I'm old. I collect 1960s comic books from when I was a kid. I know that I've got valuable in there because I realized as a kid, the #1 issue someday is going to be important. My #1 Silver Surfer, my #1 Spider-Man, so those things are important. I know their value. I'm going to go and look at their value. And that's already been a gift. I've told one of my kids that this is your collection, that when we cash this in, this is for you. So you share those kind of wealth. All right. There's another question. No, I answered it already. Okay. 5 more questions. Should we go on? Can I go on? I'm on a roll. I love it.
Yeah, we'll go ahead. And again,
if people need to leave.
For those of you who can't stay on, thank you all so much for joining us. If you are still able to stay on, Deacon Joe and Dev is gracious enough to answer the remainder of the questions. So again, thank you all for joining. And Deacon Joe, you can go ahead and finish the rest of those questions.
Exactly. Thank you. And exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to finish the rest of these questions. And then I'm sorry if you have any more. We're not going to address them because it's unfair to keep people time. But thank you. Yes, I've enjoyed this. To me, this is great. Amazing. I'm trying to see where I left off. Oh, you told us when you graduated. Thank you. I decluttered clothes, says Letitia, and I still need to declutter items. That's fine. Congratulations for starting. A body in motion stays in motion. So once you start, now don't necessarily stop. Okay, maybe tonight you don't want to, but you got to get back again to do all that. Especially papers. Good. That's your thorn, your rose, and your bud. Well, thank you, Letitia, for sharing that. That's cool. Okay, allowed you. Okay, she's talking about her SNL degree. Great. I love SNL students. But what about those damn Starbucks mugs? Don't buy them. Don't get them. I don't like Starbucks. I'm a Dunkin' Donuts guy. I'm kind of simple. But what about them? All right. So I gather there are some that are heavier than others. Use them and dispose them. Why keep them? Why have so many? Are they really valuable? Probably not, because so many people have it. That's one thing that collectors will tell you too, is that you got to wait for something to be valuable. And can you wait a long time? Dev knows, so I'll share this. If you come to my office at Byrne Hall in Lincoln Park at DePaul, I have lighthouse figurines. I love lighthouses. Am I right, Dev? And there is a wall that has, I put these up when I moved into this office. I bought the wood, painted it, and I had maintenance guy install it. And he and we put these up, and I have all these figurines, but I only collect the ones, this is my collectible, from lighthouses that I have seen. And I only collect them from the one company that I buy them from, Scossie's Lighthouses out of New Jersey, because probably more than you want to know. But anyway, that's a collectible for me. Does it have any value? Probably not. When my kids are gone, I don't know what I'll do with them. I may find a museum that's a sea museum, and donate to them. I've thought that maybe guess what, Dev? The last years of my life, I'd have every graduating graduate student take one, and they probably don't want it, but that might be some way. So just to give them away. That's what we need to do. My mom was a chronic rummage sale. She had sales, to sell them. After the sale, she'd buy more stuff. Well, don't do that. But yes, what therapy is for her. First of all, I like the first half. Go ahead and have garage sales and people will buy your stuff. But again, if you need therapeutic intervention, personally, I would say start with a decluttering coach. Let's not stigmatize or awfulize or blame people. That's never been my purpose here tonight, at least, was to do that. So I think you find the coach that will help you walk through that. These people are not therapists, but I've known them for a number of years, but they're good. They know what they're doing, and they're skilled, and they'll help her. So I would recommend that first. Great. Thank you. Great information. Well, thank you. Check the value of similar items online. Yep. It might be worth something. Yep. It might be worth your energy. Thank you for your presentation. Thanks to Dev for sharing. Yep. Always interested. Love working with my students. Very interesting. Thanks. Are you seeing any difference between demographics? Gender, no. Demographics, one of my former graduate students, Kendall Crum, looked at women of color and clutter. We had, out of that 1,600 adults that I mentioned earlier in the home, we had a smaller sample. We did not have enough to break it down by different ethnicities or races. So we had to, unfortunately, put together the women of color together. And we looked and we found similar results. It's stressful for these women. So race doesn't seem to make a difference. Socioeconomic income is something I think we have in some of our data. I'm sorry, I don't know what HBCU means.
It means historically Black.
Is that what it means? Historically Black college?
In university, yeah.
Okay. All right. I wonder if this would resonate for them. It might. Yes. Because, okay, great. Thank you, Joy. Email me later. I can send you the article or the reference that Kendall did. She herself being African-American, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, we looked at that kind of, I'd love to do more and look at those kinds of things. Okay, this is just first impression. If a person is attending an HBCU, I'm sorry, getting tongue-tied, it's a long day. Are they what economic status do they have? I mean, are they able to be at a higher, and does that make a difference? So maybe it's not race, but income that makes a difference in terms of whether people have clutter or not. I mean, that would be a great hypothesis to look at. Graduated in 81, right? During COVID, you decluttered the kitchen, good. You need to do the bedroom, good. You're retiring in a week, good. And can't wait to do more, great. So you'd be the enthusiastic kind, that's great. What about books? People collect lots of books, all right? You need to ask yourself, am I going to read this? Or am I going to use this again? Interesting too about books. Now, my wife, the teacher, was a reading specialist for most of that time. So she had a lot of reading books and started giving them away to the neighborhood kids. You know, talking to the neighbors, oh, your kid is at this grade, and could you, here's something, all right? And a lot of them were new books or very gently used. So find people who can use them, give them away. Thanks for the talk. Love to see this topic, great. Oh, another organizer, great. And you graduated in 2016, great. So we have, interestingly enough, in the Alumni Association, resources for people that help, that'd be great. And Dev, you put up something here, now what is this one? Oh, this is Kendall's study.
It's Kendall's study, yeah.
Okay. Now, she did several with me. Is this the one with the women of color? Do you remember? It must be.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great. There's that resource. Get that before it's too late. This is excellent. Thank you. During COVID, I decluttered my bedroom. Good for you. Nadia, I have continued to declutter clothes. Good. Working on the other items. Good. Yeah, just take one thing at a time and organize. That's what they're telling you to do. Adjunct now, you're ripping through the piles, great. CDs, yeah, I've got them too. I love CDs. So you made a big dent, good, have a lot to go. That's all. I mean, you know, you don't have to do this all in one day, 1 week, 1 month, sure. And thanks for the link. Okay. I think there's only 50 people more or less. I see one more question here. My partner declutters in steps. He takes the item outside, then the garage, and then the last destination he donates. Good, great, do it in steps. I'm going to end the questions here, and you can get the last word in there, Dev, and then that's it.
Oh, no, I'm good. I just wanted to say thank you so much for inviting me, Deacon Joe, and for the organizers for also having me here.
Thank you both so much. This topic is definitely popular now, and we really appreciate it. And again, thanks to everyone who joined us today. And this webinar is recorded and will be made available within the next few weeks. So Thanks again, and I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.